Hello, everyone. Welcome to SecurIT, where we discuss all things cybersecurity, people, trends, and products. Thank you for joining us on our continuing journey. Today, we're going international, and as Melvin reminded me, that's a first. Well, we're almost global. Our guest is an avid podcaster, blogger, and dives deep into digital privacy and safety with travels to London and Australia and Canada and now Singapore, or I should say, right straight, fresh, hot out of Singapore.
That's right.
Welcome, Jane Lowe, aka Miss Cyber Penny. I love the pseudonym.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Philip, for having me today. And good morning to your audience, and also good evening to yourself and your audience in the United States. Yes, and I am from Singapore, and I'm based here at the moment. And as you say, Philip, that's right. I have been in various places throughout my career. Including in, of course, London, where I spent a significant part of my career focusing on risk in the financial services sector. So right now, I am, as you say, an avid podcaster and a blogger, and also my handle in my YouTube channel is Miss Cyber Penny. Yeah. So in terms of where I am today, I am an entrepreneur, and I focus really on two main aspects. Basically, I bring an understanding of risk. In the not just the financial side of things, but also the cyber side of things as well, and also increase the awareness of people regarding this kind of risk that we are facing today in our daily lives, in our work, and also as well as when we're playing with
I want
computers.
to
So
remind everyone that it's 7 o'clock for you. I know that everyone's looking at their watches. It's 7 a.m. in the morning, and it's about 4 o'clock in the evening. And the one advantage you have, Jane, is firmly, I believe that Singapore has some of the best food from multicultural backgrounds anywhere in the world. So thank you for being here. The format really is very simple. It's a series of 5 questions. We start with you, we end with you. The success of our podcast has been to focus on you personally, right? So a master's degree in engineering, and if that wasn't enough, you speak 3 languages. You've held positions in compliance, you're a consultant, freelance cyber and financial risk analyst, all across APAC. And if I look at your LinkedIn, which I encourage people to do, and we'll put it as a link on our social media as well, but it's a high pedigree resume, right? You've got all the 3 letter acronyms. You've got PwC, you've got RBS, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank. So you've been everywhere, you've seen everything, and we want to tap into some of that global experience of ours because we're sometimes, so narrowly focused on everything North
mm.
America. So please walk us through your background and career and the various choices you made, Jane, to get you to where you are today as inspiration to our listeners.
Right. Yeah, as you were saying earlier, Philip, before we came onto the podcast, a lot of the audience are interested in getting into the cybersecurity area. So there's a huge amount of interest in understanding how, not just the young people, but also mid-career professionals can make a switch into this field. And I myself, as you were saying, thank you so much for reading through my LinkedIn and doing so much research on my background. Um, as you were saying, I had been working with various different financial institutions and also big consultancies throughout my career. Uh, but really, as I was saying, focusing on the financial side of things, the financial risk. But as we get more and more digitalized, right, and I could see that a lot of the financial type of crimes are now enabled by the cyber side of things. So for me, I think that is a inevitable element to consider when we talk about financial risk, to also consider the IT or the cyber side of things. So that is one factor that drove me to really put more emphasis on on the cyber side of things when we think about financial risk. As to my earlier part of my career, um, I love numbers. I have a quite a logical mind. So engineering really appeals to me. So that's why I was in the engineering field. And once I finished engineering, I thought, that is a practical aspect to engineering, which I like to sort of apply to in a financial sense. And at that time, financial engineering was a big sort of a, a, a big focus for many in the financial services field. So therefore, I started my career really in the financial engineering side of things. So as I was saying earlier, with the digital transformation that is uh, accelerating across so many aspects of our lives, it was just inevitable that we need to bring the cyber element into the conversation when we look at financial risk. And so, so after years in working with financial institutions, I thought, right, uh, information technology really is so innovative and it's so exciting that I really want to speak to people who have been doing this, since the beginning of their career. So, I started to think, right, why not be an entrepreneur and, look at ways of bringing people into the conversation, talking to various people. And like yourself, Philip, I love talking to people, listening to what they have to say, right? And also understanding how their career choices have been like and how different are their career choices from mine and what I can also learn from them. So there's where I am today.
Jane, you are very humble, but today is all about you. So I'll join a podcast with you at some point in time. Today, I want to learn from you. It's my turn.
All
Um,
right, okay,
so
next time I'll learn
yes,
from you.
the deal. We got a deal. So thank you for bringing us up to point, right? Financial engineering is a term that I hadn't heard before, and that's true. Financial, forensic accounting and all this and this confluence that we'll talk about in a little bit of artificial intelligence and human intelligence and big data is setting us up for something just of a great order of magnitude. Let's talk for a moment as we move forward. Um, as a consultant today, and in your various podcasts that I encourage people to look at your YouTube channel, you've covered some amazing topics. You've talked about ransomware, you've talked about Bitcoin, Web3 security. You've even talked about phishing, of course, and drone
Right.
attacks and the metaverse, right? What do you see? And again, your view is a true 30,000 foot global view. What are some of the cybersecurity trends that are top of mind for you?
Uh, right. So this is from talking to all my various guests on my podcast and also talking to people at events and conferences. The top, I wouldn't think that is anything that will be surprising to many if they're listening to this. Of course, will be ransomware, will be phishing, and uh, and phishing as a way of scamming as well, not just ransomware. So these will be the top risks. And I'm talking at from a point of view for educating not just professional cybersecurity professionals, but also for uh, everyday people like my family, my parents, everyday uh, the public, the general public who has to deal with computers. These will be the top risks for them as well.
Cybersecurity and ransomware, of course, is a big one. Ransomware attacks are getting more sophisticated and growing bigger and larger. And now we have the help of AI, both on the good side and the bad side, right? So now we've got just an unlimited amount of resources to actually write malicious code as well as protect us. So we continue to live in exciting times. So thank you for that, Jane. And then what are some of so let's talk about your corporate career and to the CISOs, to the CTOs, to the CIOs who are listening to this podcast. What are some of the information technology areas that, if you were back in your old job of, risk and compliance and governance and regulation, that you'd like organizations to focus on? Today, one of the biggest shifts that has happened is that we're now working from anywhere, right. This call is
Mm,
proof that it could be Singapore, it could be Canada, it could be London, it doesn't matter. uh, there's this concept of zero trust, right? There's a zero trust architecture. We're now gearing towards luck. We have to be careful of all the resources, all the people, and all the add-ons and nodes to our networks. In the old days, insider threat used to be someone behind the door, right? You
Mm,
open the office
that's
door,
right.
and that was your group of insiders. Today, our insiders could be sitting anywhere in the world. And then there's cloud security, there's SASE, there's all these technologies that CISOs and CTOs have to focus on. Um, in your opinion, what are some of the technology trends that you think, from a corporate point of view, should be, in the top, whatever, one, two, three, four, five?
Well, Philip, I think you picked on the sort of topical points when I speak to my podcast guests. So zero trust, cloud computing, all the COVID triggered sort of digitalization, working from home. We are living in a era where there's no more sort of the traditional boundaries of IT, right, where you have firewalls and all that. And insider threat had always been one of the very top concern for many cybersecurity professionals. So you touch on many of the sort of the key points when I asked the same question to my guests. But I think one aspect, as you also mentioned earlier, is we speak a lot about technology, but we also need to focus on the human aspect as well. So insider threat, for example, is a human sort of element to cybersecurity, but also the communication, right, and the boardroom level sort of education, awareness raising, communication, persuasion, influence, all that. I think that is also one of the big concern for cybersecurity professionals when they look at how to defend their organizations against these threats. Because as you were saying earlier, what are my sort of top risks or concerns when I look at the cybersecurity landscape? And it's the same question that the cybersecurity professionals have for their, when they speak to their boardroom C-suite executives, because everybody has a different view of um, what is important. So that was one of the probably one of the key sort of topic um, many will have to address from the start, so that you can sort of start planning your cyber defenses from a common ground. Everybody has the same understanding, talk the same language, etc., right? So yeah, so I think I spoke to one of the guests, and he says that they have a way of doing that. So sit down with the C-suite, sit down with the boardroom members, and uh, agree on what are the top risks, and then from there you kind of plan downwards, cascade your plan downwards. So I think that will probably be one of the sort of the top tip and takeaway I get
Right.
from speaking to cybersecurity people.
So, Jane, you bring up an important point, right? You're talking about boards of directors, you're talking about C-suites and their responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to organizations, um, that they run and operate. So, the United States, specifically, is now leading from government down, right? So administrations are saying, various administrations are now saying, look, cybersecurity is a high priority. Not only that, they are not making it a campaign promise, they're putting some teeth in laws right now. So there's NIST, there's our zero trust, there is the SEC that's saying that boards of directors have a fiduciary relationship in terms of ensuring cybersecurity for their organizations. There's great emphasis on privacy right now,
Mm,
laws, and
that's
we'll
right.
talk in a minute about these massive laws that China and India are about to pass in terms of privacy. So, from a general, purely from an interest point of view, from governments, how do you see it? Like, the US is very strong from a government down on cybersecurity. Is that the same case in Singapore, in Malaysia, in India? I know India is starting to build up a cadence, uh, but honestly, there was a
Mm,
time when we could go into various parts of the East. I shall not name countries, and for $1 buy the entire Microsoft suite on a CD-ROM, right? So I'm dating myself here, but there was this whole parallel black market to go buy software. Um, a while back. Today, are you seeing a growing focus on cybersecurity from a government point of view, from a government and regulation and compliance point of view globally?
I think so. Like you were saying earlier, right? Privacy laws, many more and more governments within Asia, anyways, in the APEC region, are passing privacy laws. There's an increasing awareness and understanding that we need to protect privacy. So Singapore, we have a PDPA. I believe that was back in. I might not get the year quite right, but we have it for quite some time, at least 10 years. 10 years. Um, Cybersecurity Act, we passed that as well. So that is really looking at uh, getting organizations to report on breaches. There's mandatory reporting, and then also there's a framework around also how you appoint your cybersecurity sort of uh, uh, how you conduct your cybersecurity audit. There's sort of a framework around that. And there's also a lot of guidances that has been released by our cybersecurity agency of Singapore as well around how you train your people, right? How you put in place risk assessment framework for cybersecurity. So there's a lot of effort in Singapore. Um, but I also were reading earlier that Thailand is also passing privacy laws. Indonesia as well. Malaysia, I believe they are revising their privacy laws. So there's definitely a lot of focus in this region, anyways. And United States, of course, we always look at them as sort of the benchmark to meet, right? Because you
True.
guys are always setting or rather the trailblazers when it comes to cybersecurity. And we, of course, also take a lot of guidances from, I believe it's from your CISA,
Yes.
cybersecurity. Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of,
CSAS.
yeah, that's right. A lot of advisories as well that we also use within well, in Singapore as well. So I think there is a lot of efforts, not just in terms of breach reporting or, training, staff training, but also from a privacy point of view.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that people are increasingly demanding privacy, as we probably see from the COVID pandemic, when the government passed a lot of measures, right,
Yeah.
for contact tracing and all that. You can see that people are really understanding, okay, how is this technology going to affect me, right, and my life? So definitely not getting away from not doing
Oh,
anything.
thank you for sharing that with our guests, because one of our biggest fears when COVID happened is that, look, we're not going to have to open access to our networks to people in Asia and Eastern Europe, and how safe is this? That was one of the biggest concerns, primarily for U.S. organizations. So it is absolutely very fulfilling to hear you say words like cybersecurity audit that are happening in other parts of the world, and everyone's trying to keep up with the trends. So in the United States, I believe New York and California normally lead on these initiatives. And we dread the moment that the local governments say, now you've got to do this in terms of what you click and track on cookies on your
Mm,
website. But the
mm,
one big, as a fun story, Jane, in the early days, the one big advantage for the United States is that we're at the end of the international date line. So if there's anything that happened in terms of 0 day or anything in terms of viruses, they'd start hitting on the other side of the of GMT, and then by the time it came to us, almost 24 hours later, we'd wake up to figure out that, look, what, the virus has hit some part of the world, it's been resolved, and we're good. So that's one minor
mm.
advantage
All
in the
right, okay.
cybersecurity space. So on to another fun question, right? Cadences and culture in the West is open, right? It's like, let me share all the information. On the East, it's, you're generally, and I'm being very general here, you're very generally quiet and private, right? There are sayings in Eastern philosophies that, the one who doesn't know makes a lot of noise, and the one who makes a lot of noise doesn't know, right? Or whatever. I'm paraphrasing here, but we're generally a quieter culture, right? And what I'm asking you about is, and when you've traveled from London to Singapore, if that's a direct flight, and you're looking at these very disparate cultures, right, West and East, do you notice anything different in the attitudes of people to privacy?
Ah, right. I wouldn't say that is a regional sort of differences. I would say it's a generational um, difference. I,
Interesting.
I, yeah, but that's just my perspective, right? So what I'm saying is that I would think that, you know, the 18-year-old in London and an 18-year-old in Singapore will probably have the same kind of attitude as to, what they want to share on their social media. Um,
That is very interesting, and I agree with you, right? Because they dress the same, they speak the
the
same,
dress the same.
right? Yes.
Right,
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
um, and I think, yes, so when it comes to privacy, I'm probably quite old fashioned, but also I think, like you say, maybe there's a slight element of this Eastern culture in me as well, that I tend to be a bit more private. But having said that, I look across, say for example in Facebook or Twitter, the amount of personal information that I share about myself is, I would say that significantly different in terms of attitude compared
yep.
to my younger peers. So
Right.
I would think that that's a generational difference rather
So
than a
that's a
cultural.
great that's a that's a great insight to look at it that way generationally. I'm always surprised in my travels. I'm sitting in a small little regional airport in Patagonia, the southern tip of Chile, and I see this kid, who's wearing an Adidas shirt and a Nike hat, and like it just speaks to, our just a general materialistic and branding approach that these giant companies have reached, the far corners of the world. So it's an interesting observation from you. Thank you for that. So speaking of 18-year-olds, and we're going to now talk about the future of technology and specifically cybersecurity. So
Mm.
18-year-olds are used to walking into a room and saying, "Hey, whatever, right, Siri, whatever app, play my favorite music," right? No longer are we trying to go find vinyl or fast forward on a tape drive. Um, and they're also saying, why do I need to change my password every 90 days? Why can't this just happen? Why doesn't my machine just know who I am? So I've firmly believed that the magic, so to speak, will happen at the confluence of artificial intelligence, human intelligence, and big data. And we're heading there very, very fast. If there's anything that 2023 has been so far, it's been the year of artificial intelligence. It's
Chat
scared
GPT,
some of the
right?
CEOs. Yep, exactly. Some of the CEOs of some very large companies came out yesterday and said, look, please approach artificial AI stuff with great caution, because this can have paradigm shifts in what we digest off the internet. You can have
Mm,
machines spewing out absolute junk and make it
mm,
sound very intelligent. There was on the local news yesterday how easy it is to voice clone someone, right? And you and I don't know, 20 years from now, may not even be having these conversations. It's avatars of ours that know our behavior, that's running a podcast and talking probably even better than the both of us. So
right.
there's artificial intelligence. There's this thing about passwordless lives, and there's all these massive shifts happening in technology and cybersecurity. Where do you think we're heading?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I do agree with you. I think we are heading towards this era of AI that is, you can call it enabling our lives or disrupting our lives, right? But it will become a big element in our digital in our digital lives. And many people are talking about metaverse, right? And also, like you may have different philosophies when it comes to currencies, for example, but there are also people who are saying that the way that we um, transact with each other will be a digital way of transaction. So what I'm saying is that using the blockchain type of technology to exchange value, right? So so it's not just AI, but there's also other parts of technology that's also coming into the frame. So it's going to be a huge transformation. So I think there is a need for, many of us who are closer to technology to bring that kind of awareness, education to people, to make them understand about how, these technology will be beneficial in some ways, but there's also a need to consider other um, the other side of technology, such as privacy intrusion, for example. Is it something that matters a lot to you? Because different people have different levels of concerns when it comes to privacy, right? So to
Absolutely.
consider that, yeah, and also to consider the cybersecurity aspect, for example, passwords. Maybe passwords will be gone by the time, AI really become the strong AI, as they call it, right? Where we will probably rely on biometrics or facial recognition as a way to to be authenticated when we get into technological platforms. So I think yeah, I think it's inevitable. I agree with you, but I think there's a huge therefore a big responsibility for people like yourself or myself to really educate people in terms of all these big benefits, but as well as the other kind of concerns, right? We need to think about. So I think that's hugely important. And I do want to take the opportunity to talk about about the dark net, for example. This is something that I have been looking at for the last couple of months, and the Tor network, the browser, right, had been seen as a sort of somewhat necessary to counter surveillance or censorship, right? But on the other side of things, because it's so perceived as being so strong in its privacy sort of features that is had been abused by criminals as we know it. So I think Tor is a perfect example of how technology can be seen as really start with good intentions, but end up being, well, partially abused by others. And emails is probably the other example that I also like to talk about as well. So emails, right, brings instant communication in the 20th century, but look what it has been used for and abused by scammers, by phishing, for phishing purposes. So that is another perfect example that I like to talk about as well. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of great things that technology can bring, but we do need to be aware of what its potential sort of uh, minuses are as well.
Absolutely, and we're evolving, right? We're learning. I mean, we're eliminating things faster than we're adding new things, and as we learn to be more efficient, you're right. You know, emails may go away. We hope. We'll see. I mean, God, 300 emails a day is just unbelievable. Um, I urge people to actually, our listeners, to actually check in on, the great podcast you did on ransomware, on the metaverse. That was a good one. On Bitcoin, on crypto was a great one. So we'll put a
Thank you.
link to your YouTube channel as well, so that they can look on this. And on Tornet, on emails. Great observations. Thank you for this. So, to circle back and end our very interesting conversation, and thank you for being here. Let's come back to you. Do we want to talk about the person behind Miss Cyberpenny, which is, by the way, a really cool name? About you being human, the influences on your career. So, talk briefly about your mantra, your family, your core values, please. What makes you?
Uh, right. Yeah. So thank you, Philip, for that question. So what makes me? I think I'm a rather old-fashioned person with Eastern values embedded in me very strongly by my family from when I was young. So what drives me really is when I come onto this entrepreneurial journey, you know, uh, it's I believe that yourself, you are also very familiar with this aspect as well. There's no longer the taking for granted, the advantage of a big balance sheet and a big brand name behind me. So you really have to start building your own brand name. So when I talk to, my partners, my guests, uh, people I meet who are entirely all new in this area of cybersecurity, the big two core sort of values that drive me really is to build trust, right? Which I think is very important when, especially when I am starting out a entrepreneurial journey, and also to build um, uh, integrity. So when I talk to people, it's not just about my opinions, but also your opinion matters. It doesn't matter whether I disagree with you, but it's always important for me to really listen, right? And then to really kind of follow up if I don't quite agree, right? So I think those two are the big values that drive me in my entrepreneurial journey, really to, gain trust and also to really listen.
One of the biggest pieces of communication is listening, and you're right, we can agree to disagree, right? It always comes back to a few basic things about people and communication. Thank you very much, Jane. Very well done. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this episode of Secure IT as I continue the cybersecurity discussion with customers, vendors, end users, and employees. Allow us a temporary moment of applause and gratitude for going international on this episode and helping us learn from their insights, knowledge, and their experiences. Make sure to follow this podcast for free on Google, Spotify, Anchor, and wherever podcasts are hosted. And please do DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter with feedback, questions, comments, and kudos. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next month.